My name is Courtney Hamilton, and I became a Christ believer at the age of 13 and was baptized. I have been attending Community Baptist in Maylene for about 6 years. And the story that I'd like to share with you begins in 2014. A lot of you may remember snow apocalypse. It was around that time. My husband and I were both working downtown. We got caught in the storm and ended up spending some days down there. It was right after that time that he started developing some symptoms that seemed to be pneumonia related, and the doctors just really couldn't figure out what was going on and treated him for asthma and pneumonia several times, but he continued to get worse. During this time, I was pregnant, and his sickness just continued to progress. And like the following December, we were out, and he had a really bad time where he ran out of breath, and I thought I might have to perform CPR on him. And throughout that time, he was unable to work, but we were praying, and he never gave up hope. He started praying for God's will, and he just kept researching, and that was his drive and hope. I was also praying because I was seeing him deteriorate as I was growing in my pregnancy, and we also had another child that was a toddler at the time. Then there came a turning point where we did find a case study, just so happened to come across one single case study while he was home and praying. And we took it to his doctor, who was a specialist here, and talked to her about it. And she was not really wanting to do a bunch of testing and diagnostics, but we had decided and prayed about it. We were going to go to Denver to a specialty hospital. And she said, well, they will only do certain things, and, we could do that here. And she finally agreed to a diagnostic test, a bronchoscopy, that they had not performed prior. I was 9 months pregnant. We went in for the exam, and he was only supposed to be there for about 15 minutes. And I was in the waiting room, and 15 minutes passed, and 30 minutes, and 45. And the doctor came out to the waiting room and got me, and I just asked her, what's going on, and she said, you need to come and talk with me. He's very sick. And so I went in the office with her, and she said that she had never seen anything like it in her life, that his lungs were full of pus and blood, and she asked me if I had an alternative birthing plan. So up until that point, they told him that he had anxiety. It was just, he needed to relax and all these things, and it was just like validation that he was actually sick. We were admitted to UAB hospital. They did a culture on what he had going on, and due to him giving her the case study and her working using that, infectious disease and everybody came around, and he was diagnosed with ABPA, which is allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. Prior to finding that out, he was admitted, and they found out he punctured a bunch of lungs and he broken ribs and punctured his lung. And so it was a much more serious situation overall. And I walked into the hospital, and they had him hooked up to all of these things from the time that I had been there the night before, and he was out of it. And I sat on the bed, and I held his hands, and he said, am I dying? What did they tell you? They're saying rare and those kinds of things. And I told him he was fine. He was going to be okay. And I went into the bathroom of the small hospital room, and I cried so hard and so silently and called on the name of Jesus to help give me strength, to help me make it through this time, and to just heal my husband and let him be okay. After that time, they figured out what kind of treatment he needed, and he was able to be there for the birth of our child, although he was very sick. Since that time, it has been very apparent to me that Jesus can get you through any kind of situation. Looking back, I don't know how I made it through that situation, but for Jesus and calling on his name, he gave me the strength that I needed to look back and say, wow, just Jesus. And going forward, just my perspective of life has changed. I've agreed to accept the will of God and Jesus in my life. And I know that there is hope. We live in a world that is not perfect. And I know that having the perspective of hope and faith in Jesus Christ, that allows me to go through every day and know that I can call on him for strength. And when I'm afraid, I can trust in him.